Happy New Year's Eve, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Tamur, host of this podcast, The Canadian Outlook, and tonight I will be discussing the 1980s, and I must say I am shocked by how fast the decade flew by. Let's start with the very beginning of the decade, 1980. Terry Fox's Marathon of Hope to raise money for cancer research. It began on April 12th in St. John's, Newfoundland. Terry Fox lost his leg to osteogenic sarcoma when he was 18 years old, suffered 16 months of therapy, and realized he couldn't ignore the pain of the cancer. Terry chose to run a Marathon of Hope across Canada to raise money for his cancer research. Unfortunately, the young man passed away a year later due to the cancer spreading to his lungs. Although the man had passed, his legacy has not, and I hope it will never throughout the future of this country. Also, during the first year of this decade, and quite before that too, we have heard about the Quebec independence movement, aka the Quebec referendum, which I will be getting into afterwards. Besides that, let's get into 1981. To be completely honest, everybody, 1981 was more of a cool down year from everything that occurred in the previous years. Although our country was estimated to have a population of approximately 21.9 million at the time of the census. Also, in 1981, gas and diesel were changed to be sold by the liter rather than the gallon. Heading into 1982. Unfortunately, as many of us are aware, 1982 did start off with a tragic event which I will be just covering in a slight moment, but it also did consist of a great event which will impact this country forever. The bad news was that the oil rig accident which occurred in Newfoundland early 82, which sank off into a storm on the coast, causing all these brave and courageous workers to lose their lives, unfortunately. May God bless their souls. The great news is that Queen Elizabeth II signed the proclamation of the Canadian Constitutional Act in 1982, allowing for additional revision to be approved, meaning we as a country were pronounced independent 8 years ago. 1983 was also a year which did not consist of too much, but one vital event did occur involving the English and the French language. During the 60s and 70s, many Quebec citizens were concerned over the fact that the French was slowly dissolving and English was becoming a mainly spoken language there. This event caused the governments and courts of Quebec to take action, and they were going to make French the official language, but that did not go through. In Canada, English and French are official languages, but mainly English is spoken the most. Heading on to 1984. The incumbent government of the Liberal Party of Canada was defeated in the 1984 federal election, with the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada, led by Brian Mulroney, winning the greatest parliamentary majority in Canadian history. Also, as many of us are familiar with, the TSN, the sports network, was launched and introduced in 1984. Moving on to mid-year, 1985. 1985 was also hit by tragedy when on June 23rd, Air India Flight 182, which had taken off from Toronto, crashed into the Atlantic off the coast of Ireland, killing all 329 people on board. That was a horrible event that occurred, and we mourn and send prayers to those whose families were devastated by the crash. Also, one of the greatest tools to research about Canada was invented in 85, the Canadian Encyclopedia. 1986 was also a year that did not consist of many events, but it was hit with tragedy. When the Hinton train collision took place, the train collided with the Canadian National Railway near Hinton, killing 23 people on board. 1987 was good news to Quebec, as Quebec City became the first city in North America to be designated as UNESCO, the United National Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, World Heritage Site on July 3rd. Ladies and gentlemen, 1988, in my opinion, the most intriguing / important year of the decade, the War Measures Act. The War Measures Act was a piece of legislation passed by the Canadian Parliament that outlined the procedures for declaring war, invasions, or insurgency, as well as the types of emergencies and measures that could be enacted as a result. It replaced the War Measures Act with the Emergency Act in 1988. Canada and the United States signed a free trade agreement, and NAFTA essentially extended those terms to Mexico. The administration of the U.S. President George Bush, Canadian Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, and Mexican President Felipe Calderon negotiated NAFTA. NAFTA was a huge step in the history of Canada and America's history and agreements. Now we come to the final / modern year, 1989. I must say, everybody, this year has been a blast, and the people of Toronto have received a huge gift this year, the Sky Dome. Before I end the seminar tonight to all who are still with me, I would like to speak on a major event that happened earlier this decade, the Quebec referendum. The referendum on the party of the Quebec's government intentions for Sovereignty Association in Quebec in 1980 was held in order to fulfill a pledge made by the party during the 1976 election campaign that brought it to power. The government requested that people of Quebec give permission to negotiate a new constitutional arrangement with the rest of Canada, based on the equality of nations in this referendum, meaning that they want freedom from Canada. Obviously, this plan did not manage to succeed due to the referendum votes. The people who were against it voted 59%, and the ones who were with it voted 40%. This took place on May 20, 1980, and it was one of the biggest events so far in our history. Well, now take a look, everybody. It is 12 a.m., which means we are now officially in the 1990s. Thank you to everybody who listened to the short recap and summary of this decade, and Happy New Year's, everybody. We'll see you in the 1990s.